I'm Andy Serling, Eric Donovan. We're going to go right into another race from September 13th. It is the 7th race, and it was the Futurity. And I just want to talk about the race more than any specific horse, though I think two horses to talk about in this race were Gone Astray and Girolamo, two horses that disappointed their odds. And Gone Astray is dropping back early here. Girolamo's right to the outside of him. And this looked to me to be a race there was going to be a lot of pace, and it really never happened.
No, it kind of slowed itself down in the front. I mean, they did go fair quarter. The first quarter was 22-4. Slowed it down. I think the second quarter was 46-4. The half mile, I should say, was 46-4. But here you have three horses, actually four horses stacked across the track when you consider Charitable Man out in the pink silks, the eventual winner of this race. You know, here it looks like everyone's getting a pretty fair setup here. It doesn't look like they're going too fast up front. It looks like the closers have a shot too. Everyone's right together.
I don't agree. I think that it was the way the race was run means the pace couldn't have been that fast because Gone Astray and Girolamo are not naturally speed horses, and they're jammed in behind horses. They're young horses, relatively inexperienced, and the fact that the speeds held on so well in here leads me to believe, and the fact it was a jammed field, that it just wasn't that quick a pace. And the winner of this race, Charitable Man, even though he went outside, I don't think it matters that much at Belmont. I thought he had the absolutely perfect trip. And look, Gone Astray didn't run well, and Girolamo didn't run well. But I think the way the race was run mitigated any chance they had. Look, they're between horses, both of them. They're inside. I just don't feel like they were ever comfortable in this race. And I think if they meet again in the Champagne and we get a more fairly run races, a little more speed up front, and they can settle, I'm looking for both of them, and particularly Gone Astray.
Yeah, I think you can make a good argument for that. It's a really tough race because I think you can go both ways on it. I think you could say, you know what, they were only a length and a half, 2 lengths back of the speed horses turning for home, and they didn't gain any ground. They didn't stay with those horses, and that's not something that, you know, I was thrilled about those horses. So I think we disagree a little bit here, but I think you're right, depending on what the setup will be, you know, in their later races, in their next races, that they could turn out to be good horses. They've obviously got talent. They won impressively in their maiden races up at Saratoga, but for right now, I'm kind of taking a wait-and-see attitude on them. If I get a big price on them in the Champagne or wherever they start next, yeah, I'll consider them. But for the most part, I think I want to see a little bit more from these horses. I like Charitable Man's effort. He was clear. I think he kind of, you know, didn't have any trouble. He was wide, but I thought, you know, where you wanted to be was in the clear there. But you're right, though. Gone Astray, Girolamo, getting the dirt kicked in your face, you know, getting for a young horse, getting in between horses there. It could be tough. I'm not counting him out yet, but I wouldn't be thrilled about taking them at under 4-1 or something like that.
I think the reason a little bit the field got away from them was the slowish pace and the way it worked against them. I do wish they finished a little better, but we would take a different approach, and I think if we get a much fairer setup here, they could easily turn the tables. And Gone Astray is going to be a good price in the Champagne. We'll move on to another race, a sort of unpopular race for a lot of the bettors around here, popular, of course, for some, and that was the race on the 14th.
Yeah, this is Lieutenant Ron's comeback race, and Lieutenant Ron is the number 6 horse here, breaking slowly. Got off, I would say, maybe 4 lengths slow behind the rest of the field. Maybe
2 or 3.
Even 2 or 3. Okay, but this is a horse that came into this race as a heavy favorite. Kieran McLaughlin had talked very highly of him, despite the fact that he hadn't been out since April. He was undefeated, won a race in November, won a race in April. So obviously there have been issues along the way. Now we see 6-13 steal away on the front end. Not really stealing away, but maintaining a lead that he's pretty comfortable going with it at this pace right now, I think.
Yeah, what happened, now here's Lawyer Ron is second to last in the picture, and he's
Lieutenant
moving up
Ron.
out to Lieutenant Ron. I always call him Lawyer Ron. I can't ever get it straight. He hasn't quite done as much as Lawyer Ron did. And obviously he was totally compromised by the start, because not only did he break 2 or 3 behind the field, but then he drops back further, but also the dynamics of the race dramatically changed. And no knock on the winner of this race, 6-13, a very nice horse, improving, coming off a little bit of a layoff. But if Lieutenant Ron had broken in here, he was probably going to run with 6-13 early, and we would have seen a much, much more competitive pace and a very different race, I think, and it might have helped some closers here. And I think we could have seen a far different result. However, I think that, like you, I'm very skeptical about Lieutenant Ron, who's probably going to be a short price again when he comes back.
Yeah, I think he will be, just on the fact that how highly hyped he was, and people are going to see that he had trouble in the race in the start. He was a short price, and they're going to bet him back again, thinking that he probably needed the start as well. It was his first start since April, but the way they were talking about him, I don't know. I wasn't too thrilled with the race. I said it on Talking Horses that I did pick him on top, but I thought there were a few negatives. The pace scenario, the fact that he had been very lightly raced for a talented horse, and also the fact that he really hasn't beaten much. Now, I know you can make that case with a lot of horses that win now and say they haven't beaten much, but I thought that he was a little bit overrated going in there. I still picked him. I don't know. I think if he breaks well there, I don't think I still think 6-13 is faster than him. I don't think he puts enough pressure on him to totally change the complexion of the race.
I happen to disagree. I think it would have been a much different race. And I'm not saying 6-13 wouldn't have won, and I'm interested to see where he goes down the road. But, you know, Lieutenant Ron, the layoffs, horses that break slowly, I always wonder about that when you consider the layoffs, and I agree. Lieutenant Ron, not a horse I was thrilled with in this race and wanted a short price, especially if there's other speed in it I'll be betting against the next time. And the final race we're going to show is another race from the same day, the 14th. This is the 9th race, and it had Cup Chalice, who was undefeated. The horse we're going to watch, though, is the 3, Check It Twice, who was privately purchased and switched to Todd Pletcher and has been off since, I think, December, making his first start, a promising 3-year-old who had been injured. And what happened in this race, and there's Check It Twice dropping back to 5th. Check It Twice is a bit of a stalker, but he likes to sit back much more. Cup Chalice got away on the lead. Mucho Macho did not show the speed I thought he might, and we got pace. It was 22-4, but it was 22.99. It was 23. I thought it was a very pedestrian pace. And Check It Twice, to me, in this position, is moving too soon and far too close to the pace.
Yeah, I think he's the kind of horse that probably wants to go a little bit longer too, Andy. The race was a mile here. The jockey was probably worried that Cup Chalice would get away in the lead, and he didn't want to be too far behind him and try to make up too much ground in the stretch here. He's advancing about 2 or 3 wide now on the turn. And the most interesting thing that happens to him in the race is what happens to him turning for home, where he kind of gets shut off a little bit, has to come outside of horses, and you think he's a beat horse. You think he's going to lose by 5 or 6 lengths here, as we see the winner come up alongside of him, Famous Patriot. At this point, it looks like, I would say, Check It Twice, probably not going to get much in the race.
No, I agree. And I know what you're saying, worrying about the pace, and here he is really getting sort of semi-blind switched almost, but he doesn't really have the speed to stay with the winner at that point. And I think this is one of those horses, you take him back, and you make that one run with him. If you get beat because the pace is slow, you have to lose to your strength. He appears not to be a grinder. He appears to be a horse that wants to make one run. And as evidenced here at the end, you're going to see him come into the picture again. He only loses the race by about a length running again. I don't know. If they'd taken him back to last and made the one run, I don't know if he would have won, but I would rather see him ridden that way. Check It Twice not going to be a big price when he comes back, but he's a horse to watch for down the road. He comes back and runs well. I'm not going to be surprised to see him be effective in some stake races, whether it's late this year or going into next year, maybe down in Florida.
I agree. He's a 3-year-old. There's still plenty of more 3-year-old races to be run, restricted 3-year-old races where you're going to get some decent purses. And, like I said, he's a horse that likes to come from farther back. He's a horse that's been, all his wins have been over a mile, first of all. He's never won under a mile, and he's never won under a mile on a 16th, and he's never won around 1 turn as well. So I think all things to look out for. And also, he's the kind of horse that, just like you said, doesn't seem to have that strong kick. That strong. He's kind of a grinder, as you said. And I think when horses like that have to get switched out in the stretch, when they have to alter course in the stretch, they're not that explosive kind of horse that's going to punch on and get right back in the race. It took him a while to get back in the race.
I think he can make that one run and he can win a race. We kind of disagree on him, but I think we both think he's a horse to watch. Anyway, we appreciate your watching. And once again, the website or the email address, tripsandtraps@nairainc.com. Really, send us your thoughts. Anything you have to say, any thoughts, we'll try to answer them as we can and maybe use some stuff for next week's show. Thanks for watching. We'll see you with another segment next week.